violence from either public or private sources, and not to be treated or punished in a cruel, inhumane, and degrading way. However, the geographical isolation and remote location of most farming communities often deprives them the opportunity to access government services, including the rights and freedoms to security that are enshrined in Section 12 of the Constitution. So in this regard, we felt that it will be important for the committees to look at the implementation of legislation, including initiatives that ensure that farming communities have equitable access to policing and courts in cases where their rights have been infringed upon in respect of freedom and security. The committees in this regard can oversee the implementation of the following applicable pieces of legislation and policies. Again, I must mention that the list is not exhaustive. And one of these policies, I think, that resulted from a number of consultations among different stakeholders. It's implemented by the South African Police Services. It's the National Rural Safety Strategy. It's for all rural areas due to their remoteness and isolation, as previously mentioned, and these include farming communities. The South African Police Service Amendment Act, the Stock Theft Act of 1959, it's quite ancient, but I believe it has gone through a number of amendments. Also, the animal identification, the stock theft is under SAPS as well. The Animal Identification Act also plays a role in the prevention and control of stock theft, which is quite a challenge for farming communities. I think I read somewhere, for example, that stock theft alone cost the country or the agricultural sector approximately 1.4 billion rands per year. So it will be important for the committees to see how the Department of Agriculture, which is responsible for the Animal Identification Act, worked with SAPS, which is responsible for stock theft, in assisting farming communities in those types of crimes. Other legislation include the Intimidation Act, the Criminal Matters Amendment Act, the Protection from Harassment Act, which are all administered by the Department of Justice, and Constitutional Development. The assumptions remains the same as previously indicated, given the nature and the broad scope of the project. And again, we emphasize that it will be up to the committees to narrow down what should be the focus of this exercise. Thank you, members.
Thank you. We now move to the second and the third objective. The first one, the second objective being about impact assessment of relevant legislation. So we believe that this identification of legislation will be informed by, sorry for the noise, will be informed by a number of activities that the committee will be engaged with. For instance, all the briefing sessions and engagement oversight visits will actually direct the committee to, so what are the pieces of legislation that maybe we must go have an in-depth kind of assessment. While doing a wide, there may be a few ones where the committee might want to zoom in. In terms of, assessment with a view to perhaps the proposed legislative amendments, here are the few assumptions. But it is important to have a buy-in and support from the executive. They are the ones that are implementing these pieces of legislation. So a working relationship or the collaboration with departments around assessment of key legislation and the types of proposed amendments, it's something that we think will be important. And in doing that work, this committee can actually draw from different oversight reports, of different committees. I've already mentioned the high-level panel report, and I'm now also thinking about perhaps looking at the extent to which the panel that was set up by the president, the extent to which it begins to talk to some of these issues, for instance, access to land by farm dwellers and farm workers. The third one is about private sector initiatives. We put this because the resolution speaks about other, private the actors, stakeholders. What we need to do again is to do a quick scan to look across the country. Are there private sector initiatives that are improving the living and working conditions? Mostly the living conditions. What are those? Enable the committee, propose that the committee could make arrangements to visit those and see for itself what's happening. And we are assuming that stakeholders and private sector actors will be willing to participate in this process. At this point, I'd like to move and talk about operationalization of this resolution. But I see my colleague, Mr. Honourable, is here. I wonder if he would like to say something around labor. What I have done, Mr. Honourable, was to speak up, broadly read out this and say this is what the focus. I'm not too sure if perhaps you want to look at this and see if you can make addition, and we can do that at the end when I finish the presentation. So in terms of operationalization, this is what we are proposing. And our meeting today, it's part of that we then define the approach. And this document serves to propose to the committee what will be the approach and what will be the focus areas. It's about really building a common approach. And so we hope that at the end of this presentation, there will be discussion and we will receive feedback from members and how we can improve this document. Let me say at this point that we view this document as a living document, not cast in stone, so it may be changed at any time as we proceed. There are things that we may drop off. There are things that the committee might want to include. So we take it as a living document that will be improved as we go along, depending on how the project is proceeding. Then the next thing would be to diagnose the problem. So if one reads the resolution, it really shows that yes, there are pieces of legislation there, there are areas of excellence, but there are areas of weaknesses. So we think that one of the key issues that the committee might do is to actually step back and do a bit of diagnosis. And how that can be done is by reviewing what we already know, what are the factors that are undermining legislative mechanisms to improve the living and working conditions? Equally so, it may be not only undermining, but what are those that are actually helping South Africa to improve, if there are cases of excellence that we see, and look at the interventions to date and look at the strength and weaknesses. This will be done through parliamentary briefing sessions with parliamentary officials, government departments, with resource organization, not only departments. My colleague was speaking about Stats SA, that they can actually help in terms of data. And what we are proposing is to work with evidence that's available, evidence of successes or evidence of failures, and look at what is it that we can be improved. In terms of coordinated oversight, it's really about holding the executive to accountable for enforcement of legislation. We have already said identification of legislation, workshops, and actually develop case studies that would have emanated from work done. In terms of private-public partnerships, like I have said, the idea here is to draw lessons if there are any initiatives that are being implemented. And this will be done through oversight visits, stakeholder engagements, and briefings with private sector partners, and the assessment of legislation. And I think we have talked a little bit about that. We propose following. What we are doing here is just to put some time frames as the situation stands, but this will be informed by the parliamentary program, how it looks like, and how the committee will progress. For instance, in terms of scanning and mapping the terrain diagnosis, which will be the first phase, we're looking at the areas between March and April. Today we are briefing this, and a lot of work, this is background work that the support officials will be working in the background to bring this to the committee and for the committee to discuss. So I'm talking about reports from other committees and other projects, making them available to the committee. Between the period between May and June, we know that portfolio committees will be busy with budget votes and reporting to the National Assembly with those the EPCs as well. Equally so, most importantly as well, is that the two committees have, I think Labour has 2 pieces of legislation as we speak. Agriculture has 4, if I'm not mistaken. So these committees are quite busy. So we are actually leaving May and June for the 2 committees to actually do, proceed with the work that we currently have. Perhaps by the end of June, progress would have been made, but we don't think that we, particularly agriculture, would have finished all the pieces of legislation. The period in June, between July and September, that's where we believe there will be actual work where the committees may be briefed by departments. They will begin with workshops and begin also doing oversight visits, site visits, and public hearings. I must say here that some of these activities will overlap. For instance, if this committee says it's going to visit Mpumalanga, so when it visits Mpumalanga, I don't know how many days it spends, they should be able to have public hearings, oversight visits, and site visits, and also stakeholder engagement in that province. So it's, as I said, some of these phases will overlap. It's not a straight line type of work that we're going to do. In October and November, we propose that the committee then at that stage must have completed a whole lot of info gathering, discussing and assessing, and being very clear about what is it that is found and areas of priority areas. By that time, we propose that then there should be, synthesis of findings and beginning to develop recommendations around enforcement of legislation. Areas where there's no need for amendment of legislation, but just enforcement. But even where there's need for policy review, this committee should be able to begin to say, these are just areas for policy review. And lastly, amendment. We know that October is quite a busy month as well, when the committees will be producing a budget review recommendations report. Due to the limitations in terms of the timeframes, there was no way we could just actually skip October. We're thinking that it will still be possible. I don't know how, but it will be possible that the committee might committees might want to structure their work in such a way that there are days allocated for this project and there are days that are allocated for respective committee work. And the end of November is what the House stated, that the committees must come back and report to the National Assembly. And that's all from our side. Through you, Chair, if Mr. Ngobo would like to add something, may I request him just to highlight what are the key issues really. I've already mentioned these pieces of legislation. Thank you.
Ngobo, do you have anything to add? Honourable, anything to add? Okay, it seems he might not have anything to add. Honourable members, there's the presentation put before us by our content advisors. Mamutonjwa, would you like to check for honourable members at Labour if they would have any questions for clarity before we come to the honourable members from Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development? You may lead, Mamutonjwa.
No, thank you, Chair. I would have thought that you are chairing this session, you will ask clarities from all members. I think my members will lift up their hands if they want to ask clarities through you. But I was told that Ngobo had a problem of load shedding.
Okay. No, thank you, Honourable Tonjwa. Honourable members, I will be looking out for hands for those that have questions of clarity and perhaps comments on the way forward. Honourable Klape.
Thanks, Honourable Chair. I'm having also the challenge of network. I don't know if my video will not affect it. I'm trying to put it on here. Chair, let me welcome the presentation, which looks like it is a collaborative effort from both portfolio committees. And I think, Chair, if we're starting with that footing, infusing both the portfolio committees issues together, we should be able to at least achieve the program before us or the project. So this is a very interesting and a huge relief for the sector that we are talking about, your farm workers, farm dwellers that have never enjoyed the fruits of democracy. Now, my take, Chair, on this, especially on the phases that are overarching, I heard the presenter saying it is a living document. My input, Chair, will then be, because both portfolio committees are here, Secretariat and Content Advisors, they must be able to incorporate activities of this program into the program that is existing of the portfolio committees. We shouldn't wait for these timeframes that are indicated in the phases. I submit, Chair, that as two portfolio committees, in the meantime, we should be able to incorporate activities relevant to us so that at the end, when we have joint committees, we should be able to look at the progress made, the program, and how far we are, which then says, Chair, we would also have to have a clear schedule for joint committee meetings as to how often we will meet. But in the meantime, continue to do this because we have departmental reports, others are cross-cutting to other sectors and departments that would need to collate that information. And Chair, I'm looking at these time frames, and this year is a very hectic year. Besides that, we are also anticipating local government elections, which might just disrupt. Now, we will have to push, Chair, for the sake of farm workers, and make sure that at least, even if maybe at some stage we would feel we are not yet done because we can't compromise quality over rushing to have the report by November, we should have done a considerable or recommendable job so that as and when we need to look for extension, maybe we would have done. But it will be my plea, Chair, that for the sake of farm workers and this program, we should try to push where possible that we can't even have to ask for an extension. But I'm looking at factors like your local government elections that are coming and everything. But for now, Chair, I think as a living document, it can take us somewhere. And I would really support that We look into it and input from different portfolio committees, our activities in the program, and we start right away. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Kape. Honourable Kapa.
Thank you, Chair. I'll also join my Honourable Mankezi on appreciating and accepting this presentation. And in reality, when they say it's living, I think it is true that it's living. But one other important thing is that this process, to me, is very, very important, because this is how these issues on land and agriculture can be addressed. For instance, I think it is very important, the one of recommendations on legislative amendments, because in my belief and understanding, that is where the major problems are on the farms in relation to the farm workers, their conditions and their living conditions. And as a result, as I think that one is very important, it means therefore that it has to be very much done in a hurry, because most of the things that are happening there are those that have been going on before liberation and after. And therefore it means that there's a lot that has to be done. This is based on the experience that whenever you go to farmers, as we have experience of public hearings, you talk about agriculture, you talk about land reform, talk about legislation, but people will definitely tell you exactly about their living conditions, which now it becomes an issue that does not belong to that portfolio committee. And therefore, in this case, it means that when we're working as these two committees, it will mean a lot of coordination. But I'm also worried that when we talk of assumptions, all the assumptions are positive. There is no assumption of the negative tendencies of the white commercial farmers who treat people in their own way and have their ways of being a boss. This is my private property, and somehow being protected by law. And I think such assumptions should be attended to, because we'll behave as if they are not there, whereas they are there. And another area, again, which was not mentioned, or maybe I missed it, on these working and living conditions and the rights. There is one important right which is always deferred on the part of farm workers, that are not belonging to unions, where they always seem to have the mercy or favor of their boss for them to be organized, to be unionized. And that strength of workers, which is the very, very important weapon, if the workers of the farms do not have it, they will never be getting a situation where they get their rights and challenge the employers. In this case, to me, it is important that this be highlighted as well. Another thing also which I would encourage here is that this issue of investigative journalism should also highlight areas here, because it should not be the case where the investigative journalism does not highlight issues that affect these farm workers, who are usually the black farm workers. You know it for a fact that the potato problem in Barberton was exposed by journalists Joe Gabi and I think Ruth First. I'm thinking then that if in this case also, they should not be one-sided. They should assist us and expose all those things that can be exposed by investigative journalism, because sometimes they are hidden. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Kapa. The Honourable Mestain.
Morning, Chairperson, and thank you for the presentation. Chairperson, I would just like to add, I know that our time frame is tight, but I think when we discuss the living and working conditions, we need to include healthcare or access to healthcare, education or training, and then the transport issue, which I know is always also something that is in the spotlight. And I think, Chairperson, we need to also get maybe recommendations or look at committee reports from those three departments. I'm not always sure that the Department of Health and Education and Transport look at issues of farmers, farm workers, and people living in rural areas for that case. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Steyn. Honourable Ndate Matias.
Good morning, Honourable Chair, and good morning to the Chairperson of the Employment and Labour, Mamtujwa, and colleagues. Honourable Chair, let me also join fellow colleagues in welcoming this comprehensive proposed schedule of meeting farm workers and farm dwellers as well as labour tenants. Just as a way of reminding all and sundry that the original motion really, its main focus and thrust was on the living and working conditions of farm workers, farm dwellers, as well as labour tenants. The inclusion of farmers, I think it's a distraction. I don't know why it's included here. And that doesn't make me naive of the fact that farmers also have their own unique challenges on the farms. But everything departs from where I'm seated, from a class base, departs from class analysis of what we want to achieve. Our core constituents in this case are farm workers, farm dwellers, and labour tenants. And it is on the basis of the type of relations that are maintained on farms which are exploitative in nature, class exploitative in nature. Honourable Chair, I think we must be reminded of that element. Look, in the proposed schedule, Honourable Chair, there's a mentioning of section 26, subsection 1, that deals with housing. I would propose that it must be in session of anything that goes with housing must be inclusive of sanitation, must be inclusive of electricity, clean and running water. There's no point to talk of provision of housing, because a house, from a human being perspective, is a house. It's not different from a forest in which lions and zebras live. So a house without other elements that contribute in the quality of life of human being is not different from a habitat for all species, including lions and zebras. So we must have a complete provision of housing that is accompanied with water, electricity. It makes no point that in a farm, it's only a farm owner. In majority of cases, these farm owners are white, who have electricity and clean running water, including proper sanitation. And you walk about 1 kilometer away from his house. People lives in Ihoko, if Mam Dujwa understand Ihoko in Don, lives in Ihoko. That must come to an end. And the purpose of this investigation on the living and working conditions of farm workers, Honourable Chair, must address those things and agree that the living conditions of people must be changed for the better. And in changing them for the better, it means we'll have to do a thorough job. And lastly, Honourable Chair, perhaps we must propose that in the next meeting, we must be presented with a summary of, to date, how many of our people have been evicted from farms. I know for a fact that people who have been evicted from farms are almost more far above 1 million. To date, there are about 1.6 million since 1994 to 2004. Because since 2004 until now, there is no proper statistical evidence about how many of our people have been evicted. At least the total figure from 1984, 1993, 1994, 2004 is 1.6 million. And those of our people who have been displaced from farms as labor tenants, the total figure is about 4.1 million. And these people are found in squatter camps, in informal settlements, aching for a living. We must find a way of taking them back to the farms through different schemes and land acquisition programs of government, so that we address the issue of landlessness, hunger, poverty. Once and for all, our people's dignity must be restored through this program, Honourable Chair. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Honourable Dade Matiase. Honourable Trader.
Thank you, Chair. Chairperson, due to time constraints, I would reserve some of my comments that I wanted to discuss here in the committee. I will only mention just this. I will only raise these two. Chair, the issue that we are discussing at hand is a very sensitive issue. It does not only involve agriculture and labor, it also borders around the issue of human rights violation. Therefore, Chair, this is one of the serious issues that as both committees we need to I would like, Chair, I agree with some of the proposals that the conduct advisors have raised. That one of them is to involve Ustats SA. I think, Chair, Ustats SA must come on board to assist us with the information. And also, Chair, another thing that I agree with, I think the committee must also take into consideration is the amendment or the adoption of other bills that are in front of the committees or in front of Parliament, that we must process them speedily. They will deal with most of certain things, Chair, because this issue, Chair, is not, as I have mentioned before, it has an element of, it is an issue of e-class. And indeed, some of the farm workers are mainly or mostly white people. We know where we come from, we know our history, we know what is happening in our country, that we are still, as the leading government, that we are still addressing these issues. Therefore, Chair, I would like to stick to those recommendations of let's fast track in approving, in processing the bills that talks directly to the issue that we are discussing at hand. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. Honourable Mdabe.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chairpersons, and good morning to the members and the staff. May I join the chorus as well to welcome the presentation.
Please raise your voice.
I'm saying, may I join
Thank you.
those who have agreed that the report is well presented, and that's appreciated. Chair, one is the issue of among the other departments that need to be included, it's Home Affairs. Due to the nature of the distance of the farming communities outside of the environment where they would be able to access some of these services. I'm just adding my voice on that, on those ones. Secondly, Chair, is the question of then saying, let us be all inclusive. I'm raising that in the context that we have economically transformed this agricultural sector, although we have not yet achieved 100% in terms of its transformation. However, there are of our own that are in the farmers. Therefore, we would need to know how are they feeding? How are they feeding in terms of the work that we are to do in relation to the conditions of farm dwellers and farm workers in their own space, understanding the mandate that we had. Therefore, it will be at our own good to understand their plight as well, so that when we deal with the issues of what therefore then the House gave us as a mandate, we are able therefore then to say on both sides, this is what is happening. Therefore, when we deal with the issues of amendments, legislative amendments, it encompasses everybody, not a one-sided approach. I think it would assist all of us in doing so. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Mtabe. The Honourable Bahrain.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate it. I've been through the report and I think it's missing a few points. The first thing is the Minister of Employment and Labour recently said that the farmers themselves have been largely compliant with the minimum wage. In other words, there must have been some research done by the Ministry of Employment and Labour, and I think we should get hold of that research to show that they have been compliant and to see what effect it's had. I've got a feeling that one of the members had said that we are about 4.1 million people have been evicted from their farms. I've got a feeling it's much higher than that because of the minimum wage as well. And we need to get that research done. So I think it's important that we look at that very carefully and get the research that the Minister of Employment and Labour is relying on when he says that the farmers have been compliant with the minimum wage. The next thing is productivity. We don't seem to talk about that at all. And there are practices, best practices around the world that farmers are now improving their productivity and their laborers are improving productivity, and we're able to feed the people better. And we far behind. We should be looking possibly at other jurisdictions as to how they do it and how they get their productivity up. And then finally, I wanted to also speak about the unions that are active in the farming community. Those unions somehow don't seem to be able to be doing their work. In other words, the laborers are paying their monthly or weekly stipend to the union, and yet I read this report and it keeps coming up that people are facing all sorts of difficulties, in particular the staff. Now, what are the unions actually doing? Don't they speak up? Are they needing some sort of education? Are the members of the union able to speak to their shop stewards, able to then activate it and get actions going? So I think we need to look at the possibility of including the unions into discussions of this nature and to explain that they need to actually represent. They're getting paid to represent their members. They need to represent them as well. So thank you, Chairman, for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Agbare Breed, hoe gaan dit?
Goed en self, voorzitter. Chairperson, let me start. I see we are running out of time. Maybe I think, and I want to thank our content advisors for really doing a thorough job in terms of actually quantifying what we need to do as two committees. And I think my colleagues can agree that we really have a huge task at hand when we look at the volume of what needs to be investigated. Chairperson, I would maybe like to start without going into too much detail and depth, it is worrying to me that some of our colleagues on this platform have already uttered their bias in terms of whether it be, who be guilty and who be not guilty. And I would like to refer them to page 5 of the first report, the Framing an Approach for Coordinated Oversight, that was sent to us 2 days ago. And it says, it is not a fault-finding mission, but an assessment of progress and challenges in implementation of existing legislation, and so it goes on. And I think, and I would like to reiterate that my colleagues remember this, it is not a fault-finding mission, and that they need to withhold their biased opinions to themselves. Chairperson Honourable Steyn made a direct suggestion to include access to education, training, healthcare and transport, and I would like to second that. I think we need to look at that. We've seen, I serve on another committee, and in the Free State as well, we know those are continual issues that our rural communities do face. And then, Chairperson, maybe I'm jumping the gun with this, but I would like to find out from our content advisors, in terms of our oversight, in terms of the site visits we are proposing, in terms of the public hearings, what is the sample size that we are looking at? We have 9 provinces, we have 800,000 plus employees in the agriculture sector, we have 40,000 commercial farmers, but we have more than 1 million smaller farmers or small scale farmers. And then of course we have our subsistence farmers who also employ certain amounts of people. So I would like to find out, how are we going to be categorizing the different sizes and the different distinctions between farmers? How many farms will we be visiting, and in which provinces? And then ultimately, who will make this selection? Because my fear is, as we've seen, and my colleague Heloise Denner, who is on agriculture, I think last week during our debate, in terms of the minimum wage, only 47 people were interrogated, and that the department saw that as sufficient. And my fear is we cannot do that with this large task at hand and this important task at hand. We need to have a relevant sample size to be able to make conclusive recommendations and conclusive findings in that regard. And then, Chairperson, lastly, my fear is, Honourable Hlape mentioned it and said that she thinks we will be able to assess within the time frame this task. I would like to take a counter stance, and I would like to find out, do we really think that this is relevant or not relevant, if this time frame is enough, taking into account that we have a number of constituency periods. We're going into constituency period for 6 weeks now. Then we have, as Dr. Menenza has mentioned, a multitude of work the committees have to do. Is 30 November as deadline realistic, or should we not be realistic and extend that deadline and to actually do this committee, do this report, do this motion justice, and really get clear answers, so that we do not have a bias looming over our heads and looming over this committee? But Chairperson, I will leave it at that. Thank you.
Danke, Akbare Briet. The Honourable Kosim.
Sure. Chair. Thanks, Chair. Good morning to you and the Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee of Employment and Labour, colleagues. Chair, the legal framework, I agree with the member that says we must look at the national minimum wage. But then I think during the oversight visits, we have to do the work ourselves, because the report that is referred to, that is with the minister, is as a result of the work done by the labor inspectors, and they are sometimes not given an opportunity to interview farm workers. And then the second one, Chair, will be I don't know whether in the legislations mentioned there is one talking to child labor. If not, I would suggest that at least we have something that talks to child labor, because it's a little bit rife in some parts of the farming community. The last one, Chair, and it might sound petty, is farm workers having access to information, maybe in a form of a radio or whatever, because the COVID-19 pandemic has shown that because of them not having access to information, they become vulnerable to exploitation and all sorts of abuse. So I don't know, Chair, what is it exactly that we can put so that we make sure, maybe in a form of educating them or whatever, because even if they do have radio on what their focus is on music and so forth, and them not having information, it makes them very vulnerable. I'm not going to repeat what other members have said, Chair. Thanks very much.
Thank you. The Honourable Turner.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning to everyone. I'll keep it short. I just have one suggestion, and that is that maybe we should include in the scope under the goal of public-private partnerships to also speak to, maybe during public hearings, I'm not sure, agricultural organizations and employer organizations and or trade unions, just to gain some insight from them as well as to what they can contribute to what we are working towards. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Honourable Mbabama.
Thank you, Chair. I'll try and be quick.
Sorry, Honourable Mbabama. For those that have spoken, please lower your hands. Thank you. Honourable Mbabama.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to stress that this is a very mammoth task with very tight deadlines in an election year. And I think that if we are to do justice to it, we have to move forward in a strategic and structured manner. And the content advisors have done a sterling job in actually pointing us in the right direction. I would also like us to pay heed to the assumptions that will play a major role in the success of this project. And lastly, Chair, I would also like us to think about an effective strategy in terms of holding the departments to account. I am talking obviously based on my experience of the Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development. We've had problems in the past with them in terms of accountability, and we should really think of a strategy of how we are going to deal with the lethargy from the departments if they will be doing that in this project. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Mbabama. The Honourable Ndabezitha. Nkosi Cebekhulu. Ndabomkhulu. Siyathokoza. Nkosi Cebekhulu. Honourable Donjwa, if you can.
No, thank you, Chair. Just few. I think the content advisors must also, in appreciating the work well structured, is that we must also check. Employment and Labour has a branch called Inspection and Enforcement. Get the reports of how they have, what they have picked up in conducting that in the sector of farming. In terms of Home Affairs, The importance of Home Affairs, yes, it's about them having access, but also about because we know for a fact that in some of these farms, in some of these areas which are remote, illegal foreign nationals that are illegal in the country are being employed, and some of them are being exploited by their employers in the sector. I would also want us to, because we speak as if we're in a normal situation, as we're doing the work. I don't know how. I agree with will we be doing a good work, and which is going to be accepted without any doubts, is that will November be fine, because we are in a pandemic environment, and therefore I want to raise this point, to make this proposal that we will start doing the work. If in the middle, as we move on, we pick up that we have got a number of issues to arise to attend, I don't think it will be out of this world if we can make an application or a request for extension. Chair, my last point, this area that we're dealing with, whether we like it or not, difficult as it is, it's a class, a gender, and a race issue. Yes, there are farmers who are black and white, and both these farmers, all of them, irrespective of race, but an experience that we're having is that most of people have then been exploited in a particular area, by a particular race. So we will have to be patient and tolerant with one another as we move on. I think we will do a good work, and will do the country a favor, which at least it will be in the history of this country. Those are the few issues, Chair, that I wanted to raise. So the content advisors, they will have to look into that. We are in a pandemic. We are challenged by COVID. We may sleep and wake up, we're told we are in alert level, so and so. What does that impact? How will that impact in the work that we are to do? Because we will have to do the work. I'm raising that within the context of oversight, public hearings, and whatever. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Mamudunjwa. Honourable members, we have run out of time, as we have plenary that we need to hop on to now at 10 o'clock. But let me take this opportunity to thank and welcome all your inputs and comments. And I would like to ask the Secretariat, as well as the content advisors and researchers, to take note of the questions raised and concerns raised by honourable members. Let us factor them onto mapping a way forward as how we would approach these engagements. But I want us to really lean on to the inhumane challenges that the farm dwellers and the farm workers have been experiencing. And as we have this session, they continue to be forced off the land and forced into squatter camps that may be referred to as concentration camps. If you drive throughout the country, you will see vast amounts of land that have been left totally for farmers. And the farm workers that used to reside on those lands have been forced away and clustered into squalid conditions. And we would need to ensure that in our work, we consider a roadmap onto visiting these communities and understanding and having public hearings to hear the conditions that they find themselves in and that they are living under. But also look into how best we protect food production and food security. I would then request of our staff to factor those things in, so that in understanding that we are in an election year, as well as that we are in a constituency period that will be prolonged. Let's utilize this period to map a way forward and see as to how best we meet the 30th of November deadline. And should we be surpassing that, how much more time would we require in doing this work thoroughly, so that we can be able to present a report before Parliament? So I'd like to request our content advisors to take all the issues that have been raised by the honourable members, and therefore thank everyone for your input. Thank the content advisors and the researchers and the staff for the stunning work they've done in preparing for this joint sitting. And I look forward to having more sessions that we can be able to map a way forward and doing our work efficiently and effectively. Let us, honourable members, adjourn this meeting at this juncture, so that we can be able to join plenary, which has started 2 minutes ago. I thank you. Have a wonderful day and a great weekend ahead. Thank you. The meeting is adjourned.
Thanks, Chair. Bye-bye, colleagues.
And our meeting, honourable members, for agriculture, land reform and rural development on Tuesday has been granted. We will have a full day session on Tuesday. So please look out for the notices. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Bye, my bread. Bye, colleagues.
Thank you, Chairperson. Bye all.
Bye.
Thank you, Chair. Bye.
Ngifuna ushiya kaDoc.
Let's talk about including these issues. We are still recording. Eh?
Stop recording and let visitors leave, and members are still in the platform.
Yabanceda nox.
Okay, stop recording.
Stop here.